Hey everyone, hope you can put your mind out. Mind Zero, a game that a lot of people did not really see being published in America, was published by Axis in America, just got released a few days ago, and I've been having some time with it. So, obviously for the physical goods first, Baboom. Baboom, pretty simplistic and normal. Like most video games, it has no actual substance inside, sadly. So, Mind Zero. Mind Zero was described by the Japanese audience as a Persona ripoff. And if you're hoping it was going to be like the gameplay, kind of a demon-esque Pokemon style kind of thing, even though Shin Tensei came up with the whole concept of that way before Pokemon, you're going to be disappointed. It's more of the theme slash story that kind of relates to Persona. Its gameplay is its kind of own thing, plus, normal RPG standard stuff. So, starting off, Mind Zero starts off in the shoes of high school kids, because, that's pretty normal when it comes to a modern setting in a Japanese RPG game. Now, basically what's going on is that characters are being awoken strange creatures called minds, which are your partner in crime, kinda. For some reason, the main character gets summoned to a parallel universe, told to pick a weapon, and if you pick the wrong weapon, you're going to die. But he picks the right weapon and summons forth his mind. Unlike Persona games, you can't change your mind. Your mind is permanent. However, you can change the kind of skills in the game. So everyone gets the same mind creature that they would get, but you can assign different skills or same skills to multiple characters, and you find skills in dungeons or off battles. So it seems it kind of loses that individuality, the individualness of the characters, It kind of, and this isn't the first time I'm going to bring this up, but it kind of reminds me of Final Fantasy VIII in that regard, where you're junctioning skills instead of magic to stats. You're junctioning these moves. Like, Final Fantasy VIII, you junction magic to your stats, you equipped magic, and you equipped GFs. And this basically made all the characters in 8 basically play the same, except for if you ever unlock the limit break. So you could essentially make all the characters the same, really. They could be interchanged. They're not locked down with special moves or anything. And this kind of feels like the same way. There's no real special thing except for just the kind of stats they increase as they level up. But they can all use the same skills in that, provided you have that many copies of that skill to equip to your characters. And as you level up, you can equip more skills. You start out with one skill slot, and you start leveling up, and you get a second one, and so on. So it kind of loses the individualness in that sense. Now, another thing that reminds me of Final Fantasy VIII in Final Fantasy X in combat is how your mind works in combat. Your mind basically is a shield. When you were preparing a GF, the GF's HP would replace that character's HP and take damage in that place. In Final Fantasy X, you outright summon your summon, and it takes part in the battle, replacing everyone until its death. Your mind does the exact same concept in a way. Your mind uses MP as its life, and you use TP for special skills. So MP is completely used differently. So MP is your mind's life, your LP is your own life, and your TP is what your MP would usually be. So, how the whole mind thing is, minds take damage with their MP, as I said. If you run out MP with your mind summon, you're into a break. A mind break basically desummons your mind and you lose one turn. After that one turn is done, you can't summon your mind again for 2 more turns. This element kind of reminds me of the Persona break system that's in Persona Arena. When you persona gets hit too many times, you lose your persona temporarily, and you have to wait time for your persona to be able to be summoned again. So, it feels like this game's actually borrowing a lot of elements from other stuff now I think about it. Combat, aside from that, is pretty standard. There's an elemental pie system. Now, there is a system where certain mobs are actually more defensive against your mind versus your characters. So, because initially playing the game, I was kind of like, then why would you just never summon your mind and just desummon it when you're almost out of MP? Because when your character desummons your mind, you can defend, which, that glorious move that most people don't touch because a lot of games don't make it useful. But in Mind Zero, when you defend, you can restore TP and MP. And you also generally get a little MP every turn anyway. So, the game's not incredibly cruel to you. But, yeah, I was kind of like, why wouldn't I just have my summons summoned all the time and only desummon them when they're becoming whisk and then gather MP again? Well, that's because certain mobs are highly defensive against mines as well. So sometimes you'll be encouraged to desummon your mines as well. Aside from that, I haven't found a lot of reasons to discourage, because your mines are the only ones that can use these special abilities. Your regular characters will be able to run, but aside from that, they can just do a melee attack with their weapon that they chose that fused them with their mines. Now, the characters don't really interest me, to be honest. Most of their conversations so far, I can't really say have really interested me. There is voice acting. You do get to be able to pick English and Japanese. The voice acting sounds alright for English, but it doesn't really sound like anything to write home about. But it's okay. But the dialogue, it's not bad. It just kind of has the same old syndrome problem. Playing Mind Zero just waved this whole, I feel like I've done this before kind of thing. Like, I've seen these characters and they're not springing emotion and life to me like the cast of Xenoblade Chronicles or the characters of Neo. They don't seem to be connecting to me. I'm not getting that link of compassion and feelings. But the combat is enjoyable, though. Now, the dungeons are in a first-person perspective in the game, so you'll be crawling around dungeons in a first-person fashion. Maps get auto-created as you fill it out, so there's no Etna Odyssey filling out, no real need to make your own. The game will make it as you fill it out on your own. You can find chests, and there was a few lame interactions with the dungeon. You'll find switches and things for certain doors to unlock. Instead, simply hitting a button, it wants you to flicker the screen up just to turn a freaking switch on, which seems completely unnecessary in my opinion. It doesn't really add anything to the game at all. And personally, I'd rather it be the back screen if you really had to do that. I just hate having all those fingerprints on the front screen. Ugh. But I've already talked about my disgust of using the front screen. And that's just a personal taste. But anyway, moving on. Nothing too really different from the first person perspective. You have different floors, and you'll occasionally be lucky to be given the mercy of a warp point to get the hell out quickly. So, nothing too unusual there. The story progresses with 2D art interactions with dialogue, while combat has 3D models being used in a first-person perspective of seeing the group of mobs, and when you do attacks in that, your allies leap in that. So the way combat is handled is kind of nice. Taking a really good look at the models, though, might be disappointing for those who want really good graphics, though. The models don't really seem to really scream to me, to be honest. I mean, they're serviceable. They're not awful or anything, but there's this weird clash of art in the game. Like, the main menu, when you're looking through your items and stuff, the art used for the characters, I think that art actually looks really unique and nice. Especially your two first characters in your party. The main character looks so drivenly depressed, I don't think anything can make him look too different. But the models, the 2D profile images they use for the story interactions, they feel like they're missing that weird, intriguing touch of detail that the profile images in the menu have. And that's really odd. It just doesn't seem to have the same thing. It's just slightly more plain during the story segments, while to me it feels more detailed with the menu profile. So, and like I said, the 3D images, the 3D models aren't anything to particularly write home about, but they're serviceable and they do the job. The music, haven't heard a whole lot of music. Some of the boss themes sound pretty nice, but the normal combat theme sounds very irritable. And speaking of irritable, I hope you love hearing clomp, 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 clomp of footsteps all the time, because that is annoying the fuck out of me. I know people make fun of that shit in like survival horror games and stuff, hearing the clamping of feet walking around and that, but it is so annoying in this game because you're not even moving anyone, you know. It's kind of like Persona 3 where you just have a map and points that you select. The only time you move is in dungeons and that. But yet all these story segments is like, I'm gonna one, clomp, 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 clomp. Oh, we better catch up with him. It's like, it's so annoying. It could have made it a much shorter clip or something, but it just kind of irritates me like hell. And, you know, that's probably just more of a me thing. But, just throwing that out there. I'm not incredibly far in the game, so I don't know the big old picture when it comes to the story yet. But from what I gather, the government knows that mines exist, but they tell the cops that it's a drug, and the cops are looking for people who use mines. Except they think they're just drugged out people. Now, the whole thing with mines is mines are from another dimension, the inner realm of the mind. And basically, some minds break free, they possess people who are weakened and emotional and shit, broken emotionally, and basically decide to go on killing sprees. Thus, the story seems to be going on this whole, why are there these nut job mass murderers that say they didn't do it? Well, they were possessed by minds. They made them murder all the children. And that seems to be from what I gather from the plot so far. I do have 4 party members currently, so it looks like you will probably end up with 6 characters from how much space there is on the party screen. And your back characters, the game does tell you, will gain experience as you progress, just not as much. So you don't have to feel like Final Fantasy X syndrome where the people you don't use don't ever fucking progress in anything. So you don't have to feel about that in particular. Now, there is one more thing about combat I didn't mention, burst. Your mines can use burst, and burst basically is a Super Saiyan thing which costs all your TP. And what it does is it gives you the Force Torn immediately. So if you're like desperate to throw in a heal all or something, you could burst, use the heal all first before anything else goes wrong. So it's kind of that last desperation move to turn around the fight in its most horrid moment. The game does offer multiple difficulties, so if you're a sadistic person or looking for more of a cruise line experience or just normal, you get those options. Overall, Mind Zero seems like a decent RPG on the Vita. However, if you're more of a person like me who's played a lot of RPGs, the story might not seem as interesting. It might get more interesting as it goes, but Force of Questions, it so far hasn't really hooked my soul into it. It's funny that with the criticism I gave Demon Gaze, which wasn't horrifyingly bad, it was just mostly about the horrifying perversion, boobs, and underwear everywhere. But, Demon Gaze has actually been very enjoyable and interesting. So, I wouldn't say Mind Zero is bad, but if you're really one of those people that want to get away from the gothy, depressed looking character, that's definitely not going to help you very much. But overall, it seems enjoyable. I think the combat system is going to be probably the bigger draw for more senior people in RPGs, because it seems like there could be some really good fun there with how you need to be careful not to have your minds out for so long, but having them withdrawn. Your characters on their own can't use a lot of special abilities, and of course that leaves them vulnerable to be murdered. So there's a lot of interesting strategy that could be there, and I think that'll be the more interesting draw there. The story, it's still always say if the story's going to be crap or not, but it's, like I said, it hasn't really hooked me in very well. I haven't really cared much about all the dialogue, the characters, and there's a lot of dialogue. There was a lot of dialogue. So, if you find yourself not enjoying the characters, you might enjoy the gameplay more. And luckily, it does offer skip, but I don't like skipping that stuff. But at the same time, it's just not really interesting me enough. And the game is rated teen, and it usually has the stuff like partial nudity and all that crap that you would find on a rated Japanese game of that. Which, I haven't actually seen anything like that unless they were falling to the mines, which I guess that's a possibility. The main character's mind does kind of have a perverse kind of dress code there, but overall, I don't really hate the game. It's interesting. I just kind of feel like all the RPGs I've played in my life just kind of make the story feel more played out than unique. And, that's kind of funny saying that from, like, Xenoblade or Persona 4, which technically don't have completely unique characters, but they have great personalities, backdrops, and voice actors that help give them life and connection and emotion to their characters. And that's kind of what I think's a shame with the voice actors. Not saying they're bad, they're definitely not bad. Believe me, we're not talking about Drakengard 1 standards or Eden Ben from Buri Fetsu Musashi. Musashi. It's like, we're not talking about that kind of bad voice acting. Though, of course, I always enjoyed Ed and Ben because their voice acting was just hilarious when I was a kid. But that's just me and the PlayStation 1. But I don't know. It just doesn't feel like the really into the walls very much. I know. It feels like kind of a flat delivery. It doesn't feel like so crazy, Like, imagine if Yosuke's lines when he's like fucking getting kicked in the balls and shit's happening and they fall on the TV for the first time and stuff. Just imagine if it was so flat and it was like, ah! I mean, I don't know. I would say get Mind Zero if you want an RPG for your Vita. Or something that has story elements, reminiscent of the Persona kind of thing. Because they're really drawing on this whole, the mind thing. And you're called Minders, by the way. Minders! But, I personally think Demon Gaze, because they're both first-person dungeon crawlers, I would say Demon Gaze is a better game. Its art style, while crazy and offers a lot of mashed up art styles, all the art styles are very interesting and variety. I mean, it got serious to perversion, so you got a whole variety of characters you can make in that. Mind Zero, I don't know, it seems like a really mixed bag to me. I would say Demon Gaze is probably something I think is a lot more refreshing in a way. But, either way, I don't think you can really go wrong getting Mind Zero, though. I don't think it's going to end up bad, but again, keep this all in mind. This is a Force Impressions. I think it's okay. The story just doesn't hook me very much so far. But the gameplay I'm actually liking. But of course, that's going to be harder to play because, 2 first-person dungeon crawls, and I need to let's play more Classic Heroes, and I still need to play more of this thing. Oh, when Carter said he had to fucking force himself to play this game, he wasn't kidding. Ugh. Anyway, I think, I was going to make one more joke if I had Lightning's Return sitting there. I was going to be, and then this thing! Anyway, that's my thoughts on Mind Zero. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to leave a comment down below. And I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on the title. It's kind of a mixed... I really have to say that there's a very mixed perspective on that. So, anyway, until next time, my dear viewers, hopefully we'll have something really exciting next time. Peace out. And praise the sun!